Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Economics Monday on the IBM TV network. I'm Nick Palavita, your host for today, along with Peter Bennett from Modern Investing and Terry Rushton, who is actually from the great company called National Pension Partners. And no, I'm not going to forget about Dan Worthington. Dan Worthington has joined us also from the Salt Lake City area, who's also a JDL ED and sits on the board of trustees at the South Dakota Trust Company. Is that what you do still, Dan?
Board of directors, yeah.
Board of directors for South Dakota Trust Company, which I think that's a pretty cool job if you want to do it. Now, later on today, I did get notification, which means it should be about 30 minutes from now. We will be joined by the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States of America. He's going to be joining us. Plus, we're going to have other people join us as we're finishing up with the World Edition. Let's welcome, of course, from Canada, we have Saka Star. Dosadanya Saka. And then, not only are we down under, over the top in Canada, we have one of my favorites from down under, the former multi-billion-dollar hedge fund manager. Let's bring in Shaquille Latimer from Australia. Good day, mate.
I'm a bit out of sorts today, guys. I just have to warn you. I've spent an hour with Democrats, so I feel like I need some time to mentally recover.
You got worked over. See, on World Edition, you get worked over by the Democratic Party. When you move over to Economics Monday, you get worked over by the Republican Party. So
no. I think that they can reverse the frontal lobotomy that was just attempted on me by the Democrats on the other show.
Right? Yeah. That's very. More or less toward the Democratic Party, and this is more or less toward the Republican Party.
That's what it would take.
This is economics. What? A lobotomy?
Yeah, it would take a lobotomy to become a Democrat.
Yeah. Dan Worthington is very.
I said to them that I hadn't lost. I do drink a fair bit because I am Australian, but I still haven't lost enough brain cells to vote for the Democrats. For some reason, they didn't like that too much. I don't think.
It's pretty political over in World Edition, I must admit. That's a whole different show. Okay, just to let the panel know that at 11:30, I got an email confirmation. The Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, will be joining us, to discuss, of course, his current book, which is America 2020, Still a Superpower. 2040. Yeah, 2020 is over with. Forget it.
We're exactly. We made it. We're still a superpower.
Yeah, we're going to admit we're still
barely.
And Peter has asked me, what's the topic for today? And I thought, good question. So what are we looking at for today when it comes to the economy? I mean, the only thing I can think of, because we do broadcast all the economic, is that we're looking at a market that's at an all-time high. We're looking at real estate, or at least in the United States. I don't know about Australia and Canada, mate. Okay, the real estate market here is really tight. I mean, at least in residential. You just can't buy a house here. And the housing prices are unbelievably hugely high. And then we're also looking at commercial real estate, which is empty. So we do have some very interesting economic trends, and then the coronavirus still hasn't gone away. Now, Terry, I know you work at National Pension Partners, and you bought a house, right?
Yes, Terry? I did 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago. Well, I was going to ask, did your house increase in value in the last 2 years? That's my question to you.
Somewhere around 30% in the last 2 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what we've seen here. And so aren't you glad you bought?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you feel any guilt that your property prices have gone up? You're a white man, and there's all these people who haven't got that debt whose prices have gone up. Do you feel as though you might be transphobic, Terry?
I don't feel the least bit guilty. I did it all on my VA guarantee, nothing down, totally government financed. They owe it to me.
Absolutely, they do, especially if you're on a VA guarantee. Good on you.
Wow. Okay.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Don't let any of those flag burning morons tell you otherwise.
Flag burning morons. Okay. Well, the thing is, so the thing
tell
is,
us how you really feel.
Tell us how you really feel.
Man, I haven't started yet. I'm on fire tonight. Let me tell you.
But just remember, he's in Australia. So just for what do they call it, full transparency. We have to let you know that He is not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He's not allowed in the United States because he is an Australian. So
I'm anti-government at the best of times, and I'm really in a mood today. We've got military helicopters flying over residential streets with these big megaphones telling people to get back inside, put your masks on. You know, this is Australia. You can't do that. And people going, oh my God, people protested. They had these freedom rally protests. They're like, oh, this is terrible. You can't do that. But we had BLM protests in Australia that got approval to go and protest because apparently that doesn't cause super spreader events. And we're Australia. We didn't have slaves in this country. One of the few countries on earth that never had them because we're too young. So what's the point of these protests? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I've got to be in my bonnet today, let me tell you. And just be thankful that you're not a local member of parliament anywhere near me because you would have copped a phone call and some letters from me today.
Okay. Well, the thing is, like Australia, even though I know you brag about the fact that you didn't have slaves over in that particular country, isn't it true though that your country was? Yeah, your country was founded on criminals. Isn't that what happened? I mean, the way I understand it, there was an export. What they did is they exported criminals, and that created the country of Australia. So what happened is you were the dumping ground for Great Britain. When they wanted to get rid of their criminals, they sent them over there.
Well, in Georgia, you forgot about Georgia.
Which really makes you wonder where the sense is, right? You have a country founded on convicts, and then you're going to tell them to all stay home and behave themselves. That's not what we are. That's not who we are. We were founded by being bad. Okay, that's why when we go overseas, the American girls love us so much because everyone likes the bad boy, right? That's what we are. We're not polite. We're not politically correct. We're rebels. We don't like government. We don't even like each other. We're so good. If you go to one of the oldest jails in this country, I finally made my way down to Tasmania, which is like another little island south of Australia, which is technically part of this country. And there was one of the oldest jails down there, and I was down there and I was reading, the thing on the jail wall. And a lot of the prisoners would come over, and some of them actually wanted to just leave England. So they would like run past, they'd steal an apple, they'd take the apple to the police station and go, look, I stole an apple, send me to Australia. So they'd come over to Australia, they'd go into jail, and some of them would end up being the jail wardens or the superintendent of the police. Like that's what you did. You came over here, you did your time, you got a new start, and off you went. So a country founded like that, you're going to tell these people to behave? It's not going to happen. What sort of craziness is that? Only a politician can come up with something so stupid.
Well, and you know what? I would raise the fact that, not only that, but first of all, America was founded on by a bunch of rebels too. I mean, all the people who left England were the people who either were forced out because they were criminals. But in those days, it might have been a little easier to be a criminal just to eat. Nowadays, in a lot of countries, you don't have to be a criminal just to eat or feed your family. But back then, it might have been like you might have been a smart person who was just bold and said, this is my only option. But then in America, we're all rebels too. So, there are interesting arguments about whether there's a different personality makeup, genetic makeup. It sure seems that way between.
Many people came over who were white, who came over under articles of servitude. They had to serve time to pay for their trip over, and served in the households or whatever they did to earn their fare. And so it's, maybe we all need reparations. My people came over on the Mayflower.
Dan's going to be down the Democrats' office tomorrow. Where's my reparations?
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm a Mormon. They murdered our people and kicked them out, took their homes. I want my reparations.
They only had that because of those funny undies that you guys wear. That's the only reason why they treated you that way.
Well, my question to you, Shaquille, is that because we're going to have David Walker on later on, and it's America 2040 still a superpower. Do you people in Australia consider yourself a superpower, or do you consider yourself to be kind of like just another country that's out there? How do you view yourself?
So the thing is, in our region of the world, we have to look at, who backs us. And given that Americans get the uranium that you need for your nuclear weapons from us, I think we're a superpower in our region.
there you go.
Oh, okay. See, I always thought you're just a superpower relative to the kangaroos that throughout your country, and the superior to your kangaroos, and you're in a dicey little island, and so since you're on a dicey island, that you think you're a superpower on the island that you're at. But let's go further on.
I don't know where we're heading
world out
tonight,
there.
but New Zealand only is a Five Eyes country because Australia's around. Otherwise, they'd have no chance. I mean, look at them. They're 4 million people. They're a country that should have been part of Australia. I mean, without us, what do they do?
Yeah. But the thing is, there's a big world out there. I don't know if you know that. And that the thing is, the United States of America is everywhere. I mean, we're big. We're the world's second largest economy. You guys have like 25 million. You're tiny. Very few, but you have a big land mass. You have a bunch of kangaroos
right now, Nick.
So what?
Nick, I think we're the largest, aren't we, right now?
The largest what?
Economy.
Okay, we're the world's largest economy.
Maybe
so
not
we are
long, but
not for long, but we are a world superpower. I'm just wondering if Australians, when you get up in the morning, you beat your chest, hey, we're a superpower, or do you say, hey, we're really a superpower only because on our little tiny island we're a superpower, but other than that, we're not?
No, I think given that without Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, then. Without your outlying territories, Alaska and Hawaii, we're almost the same land size as you guys, with 1/10 of your population. We've got better beaches, better looking women, more unity, more freedom. Yeah, I think we're good here. I think we're excellent, and we don't have some left wing nuts just to the north of us.
Okay, so you're delusional, and I understand that. We'll go to Canada. Okay, do people in Canada, where you're from, Sasha, do you guys consider yourself a superpower? Canada.
Only after we will share with Russians Alaska. If not, we are not any superpower at all.
See, at least the Canadians know that. But you're originally from Russia. Does Russia consider themselves a superpower? When you were in Russia, did they beat their chest?
Absolutely, several times a day. And I'll tell you, the life in Russia is not easy this time. It's actually, a few years ago, one well-known politician confessed to his friend that, to steal today is such difficult proposition that it feels almost like a 9-to-5 job.
Okay. All right. Now we'll go to the United States of America. Dan Worthington. Okay. I know that we're buried in the USA. Is the USA, do you guys consider yourself a superpower? And how do you look at Canada and Australia?
Canada and Australia are our friends, and we need all the friends we can get in this world today. I think current administration's messing things up very, very badly, probably intentionally, because they want to reestablish the quote unquote world order that got disrupted in the last administration. And so we're seeing a lot of irrational decisions, such as shutting down the Keystone Pipeline and doing all the other stupid things that Biden's doing. Of course, I don't blame Biden. He's probably not even aware of what he's doing. He's probably just been given his placard and his McDonald's McNuggets to make him happy. So, I don't know. If we are a superpower, it's because it's just surely based on our past history and the volume of business that we do. Our government's doing everything it can to undermine us and to encourage the international corporations to stay that way. And God bless America, because the Democratic Party is doing everything it can to destroy it.
Okay, Mr. Terry, since you're in the United States of America in the subdivision called Utah, do you guys consider yourselves part of America first? Because I'm never sure about Utah. And the other part, do you consider the United States to be still a superpower? Now, first of all, let's go to the United States.
Can I answer the question?
What?
Can I answer the question?
Of course. I don't know if I could stop you, so go ahead.
No, of course you can't stop me. Now, Terry, you are in Utah. There's Mormons everywhere in Utah, so I hear. Can I ask how on earth you guys produced Mitt Romney? What happened? What went wrong?
He's an alien.
Yes, but he's a documented alien that you own, right? He didn't come from another country.
No,
You
he
guys-
didn't. He's a Massachusetts transplant, remember?
But
And
yeah,
I think
got
he's
elected.
probably had the lobotomy you're talking about, because nothing else
Wait,
can
wait, wait.
explain
But
it.
he did get elected.
Yeah, he did. I don't know how that happened.
He got elected in Utah, even
Right.
though he's from
Exactly. What's going on?
Utah can't just wash their hands and say, "Oh, he's a Massachusetts transplant." I mean, he could have just been a guy who came from Massachusetts, but no, he was elected senator.
Okay. Well, first, Terry. Now that I'm put on the spot, but does Utah consider themselves part of the United States? When I go over there, everything revolves around Salt Lake City, like that's the world headquarters of the world. Is Utah part of the United States? You consider yourself part of the United States of America?
Absolutely. I did my missionary shtick in Texas at one time and was working through an area that was very middle class, very white bread, and very military, and was talking to somebody at the door, and they asked me a bunch of questions and finally figured out I wasn't brand X, I was brand M. And I asked them, why are we getting such a much more warm reception? And he said, because we know that you guys serve. That in Vietnam, in World War II, whenever it's been, the Mormon people definitely serve. We wave the flag. The state flag means nothing. We are conservative, but yes, we're very much Americans.
Okay, Peter, you're in the great state of Connecticut. Do the people in Connecticut consider themselves part of the United States of America? Since I know that's where the land of where they have all these hedge fund managers hang out. And also, I have another question about your house. Did your house go up? And we'll do this one first. Did your house go up in value the last couple of years? I guess that's my question.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it went up about 20% this year.
Wow.
Yeah, there's huge demand because we live, within a commuting distance of New York, and millions of people probably, very likely, want to get out of New York City right now with COVID, with the theaters closing down, with the Zoom type of technology now. People can work from different places. So it's like, why do I want to have a $2 million 2-bedroom apartment, and pay the maintenance on that, and so now it's much more appealing. But it's always been an appealing place because it's the most southern part of Connecticut, and it's an easy commute to New York City, maybe 50 minutes, depending on which train you get on. So you can pop into Grand Central, and so it's very appealing, and we have nice beaches. Not great because we don't have the ocean, but nice sound beaches. So that's values have gone up, and especially in the last year or two, and I think they'll continue to go up. There's because interest rates are down. So if interest rates are down, people can buy more house with their money. Plus the market's up, and I think it'll stay that way because I think interest rates will stay low, and so the market's going up so that people have more money again. So more and more people, who have invested in the market. So you get a bifurcated kind of society in a way, because the people who are younger, especially the millennials, get kind of burned because they don't maybe have houses, they don't have stocks, and it's like. But of course, the baby boomers set it up that way. So to the other comment. First of all, what Dan Worthington said was right on point. I think, the United States, we need all our friends for sure. I mean, Europe is so. I mean, now Biden's talks, everything's fabulous. We're getting along great, except for they don't do anything, when you look at the actions. And Dan Worthington was right about, too. The policies of the United States are crazy right now. I mean, I would mention this week, it just came out, 180-something thousand immigrants came in to the United States last month. Now, they were not even evaluated generally. Now, for many purposes, some of them could have been terrorists. They've already caught at least 10 terrorists coming in. It doesn't take many to cause damage. But also, COVID. 8% of those people have COVID. And, on one side, Biden says, so you have to wear a mask. but we're going to let in 8% of 180,000 people, and then we're going to ship them all over the country without even testing them. So you're talking about spreading COVID. You know, they're on track to enter for 2 million illegal immigrants to come into the United States this year. And
2 million? Legal or illegal coming in? Legal or
2
illegal?
million illegal. Of course, that's what they'll admit. Maybe it's more, but let's take 8% of that. That's 100. And, you know, first of all, it's 160,000 people with COVID at the 8% rate. That's a lot of COVID cases, and they're shipping them all over in buses to your state, to my state, you know, all over. And, you know, and the other thing is we're not doing, there's no sense to it. You know, it's like maybe, like Dan said, it's like to, you know, reestablish the world order, but it just brings the United States down, and that's not a good thing. The only thing I would say is that I think the United States is going to be in very good shape because in the I think that people know it. You know, between the crazy Democratic defund the police, which has got to be the most moronic political position I've ever heard. It's got to hurt the minorities who are dying. I mean, dying by the thousands. You know, I mean, and if you're in a minority neighborhood, it's like, why am I going to vote for these people? My friends are dying. It's not safe to go out in the street. And then, you know, it's the stupidest policies in the world. So my hope is, and I think it's going to happen, first of all, in 2022, I believe the Republicans will slaughter the Democrats. They'll probably take the House, they'll probably take the Senate. In 2024, there's a good chance the Republicans will take the White House again. Trump is thinking about running. But personally, I'm hoping for the Florida governor because I think he's got the same policies and he's more likable. But whoever runs, I think will win. And you could do a whole show, but it'd be very controversial, Nick, on who won the last election. Man, that was.
I want to mention something.
Can I just quickly say, if all this talk about vaccine mandates, if you're going to force people against their will to take the vaccine, why aren't you forcing the illegals crossing the southern border to take them at a minimum?
Yeah.
If you're going to shoot these people all over the country, if you want to force Americans to do it, like you can't force Americans to get their fingerprints taken before they've committed a crime. But if I come to America, I get fingerprinted. Now I only have to use 2 fingers. But the first few times I came, I had to be fingerprinted in full because I'm not a citizen. I don't have some of those rights. You know, anybody who immigrates to America or travels to America, you know, you have to obey the rules. And if you don't like it, don't go. So, you know, if these people that are crossing the border, not obeying American laws, and they're at risk of being carriers of COVID, exactly why can't you enforce the mandate on them? And if you're not prepared to do it on them, why would you enforce it on American people?
Or at least test them. I mean, both. You know, I mean,
don't worry about testing them. Just inject them.
They're almost insane policies. You know, it reminds me of when President Obama shipped billions and billions of dollars in crates to Iran of cash and made a terrible deal on the nuclear deal. It's like, you can have a nuclear deal in 10 years. We really won't enforce it anyway. And here's crates of cash, which you can then use to finance terrorism and, you know, and attack, you know, Saudi Arabia and all kind of different countries. It's like, what are they thinking? You know, are they really, do they hate, is it self-hatred of America?
The strategy on how to be rich, Peter, apparently. See, I can't bring myself to say these words, but apparently if you chant death to America, some presidents like Obama will fill planes up with cash, physical hard cash, and fly it to you. I mean, the way it used to be, even under people like Clinton, the way it used to be is you said that shit, someone was dropping a bomb on you. Now they're dropping, you know, pallets of money on you. What?
Yeah, cash.
And we're your allies. We actually are on those planes with you going, yeah, have some money. Well, I don't get it.
You know, yeah. The thing is, it's like you look at it and say, they can't be this dumb, you know, but it's not, it doesn't seem intentional because it's just so incompetent. But I don't understand. My only theory is that the news, they only see news from their own, you know, it's self-reinforcing. In other words, I blame the media for the most. And if you're in another country, do not watch CNN and think that's the world news. It's the most slanted thing in the world. But if you, a lot of people are liberal, and I'm not totally conservative or liberal. You know, I fall in the middle in a lot of issues. But a lot of people are in media bubbles. So if you watch NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, if you get your news in blips from them or on the radio from most channels, you live in a vacuum. So my theory is maybe Biden lives in this vacuum of self-reinforcing, crazy policies. I don't know. That's my guess. How could he not have any sense at all on some of these isdays? Or
He doesn't have any sense at all. That's the problem.
Well, but
they have had an effect on me, and when David Walker gets here, I will inform you all that I have actually decided to embrace socialism. No, I have. No, I'm serious. I have. I've looked into it, and I've decided that there are parts of socialism that I like. So I am now going to be in part a capitalist and in part a socialist. And when David Walker gets here, I will be explaining my viewpoints, and I would be very curious to see exactly what pushback I get, because I guarantee you the Democrats won't like it when I say I like socialism.
See what happens? You lose your job and you become a socialist. I mean, what's going on here?
I didn't lose my job. I went into early retirement, Dan.
I know. I'm kidding.
Did you finally
lost it?
Did you finally
lost it?
Did you finally sell your hedge fund and become unemployed? Is that what happened?
That's right. Okay. I might move to Connecticut and become a Democrat.
Well, yeah, Democrat. Well, the thing is,
makes sense.
Yeah, you came at the right time. So we're going to bring in from Washington, D.C., the former Comptroller General of the United States. Let's welcome the Honorable David M. Walker. David, welcome to the show.
Yes, but set the record straight, Nick. I'm not in Washington, D.C. That's right. A mess. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, right outside the Beltway, as Reagan would say, in the real world.
Where the other government agencies like the FBI ever have their headquarters. Is that right, over there?
Not yet. We're talking about it, but not yet.
Isn't the FBI there in Virginia?
I'm sure they have an office here. There's no question. But the main headquarters is down in D.C. where they're talking about moving it.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing is, we just found out Shaquille is going to become unemployed. I think he sold his, or you already sold your hedge fund, so you're unemployed as of today. And
he's voluntarily unemployed.
So is everybody else, Dave. Everybody else is on Social Security benefits as voluntarily unemployed as well.
Okay, but
you're not getting the subsidies that the U.S. government passing out that are so lucrative in some circumstances that people don't want to go back to work.
Well, he's thinking about moving to the United States and going on
my visa. I am thinking about coming to America, overstaying my visa and being an undocumented person and taking advantage of the Social Security benefits, because it's not mean tested. You could be a billionaire, illegal, and still receive the benefits. So that sounds kind of good. And as I've said, I'll get into this a little bit later on, but I've decided to embrace socialism.
Well, Shaquille, just so you need 10 years of qualifying work. They look at it by quarter in order to qualify for a lot of the Social Security benefits and Medicare benefits.
Only if you're legally entitled to it. But if you're an illegal, you get everything you want.
That's true. You get free health.
I was reading up because Sasha made a comment on one of our previous shows about the vaccine. So I looked it up on the CDC. So it's like, okay, I wonder who's entitled to it. And I find out that anybody in America, like every single person who's in America, is entitled to the vaccine. Doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. So you've actually got people that are legally crossing the border from Mexico, coming up to the United States, getting the jab, and then go back to Mexico. Like, what? What is wrong with you guys?
That's our good neighbor policy.
Good neighbor. Can you send some Pfizer over here to Australia? We really need some.
Well, there's no shortage of vaccines, so I have no problem with that.
Well, it's Walmart.
You realize.
Oh, you need more vaccines over there?
I can't get the vaccine myself. I want to get the Pfizer vaccine. My appointment is dated the 18th of November. Oh, no. That's when I might get my first shot.
Well, I have
a family member overseas who's
Why is that?
Come to the U.S., go to Walmart.
Is it the government? Because I know in Japan, the government in Japan was very slow to allow any vaccines in, and so they were way behind. But it was the government who was sticking their face into the thing. If they had just let it, the vaccines come in, they would have been way ahead of where they are. Is it the same?
Our Prime Minister screwed up, but that's not the point. I mean, here we are trying to get our hands on the vaccine, and the other day, not that it matters, but the other day, we shipped 800,000 Pfizer, not AstraZeneca, 800,000 Pfizer vaccines from Australia to Indonesia when we're short. I don't understand. I don't get it. I mean, forget about a frontal lobotomy. I think you need a full-blown lobotomy to be in politics. What the hell's going on?
Now, Shaq, you still have your girlfriend in Georgia?
That's an off-air conversation, Dan.
Well, no. Anyway, see, what you can do is get a ticket.
I'm pleading the fifth.
Go to Georgia, right? Go to any Walmart. Go in there and get stuck for free. No documentation, and it's free. You don't have to wait. At Walmart. Okay, that's the answer.
Long drive. It's a long flight.
The problem is a long drive from Australia.
As
long flight. Yeah.
Nick mentioned before how we're a country founded on convicts, and you've got to keep the prisoners in. So what the Australian government has decided to do, in their wisdom, they've got military helicopters flying over, making sure that people don't, leave the house without a mask, and they've closed the borders for Australians. You can't leave. That's why I'm still here. I'm a dual citizen. I can leave. I can't leave. I can't even catch a flight out of here. I've got to be a boat person out of Australia. I've got to be like an illegal immigrant.
Shaquille, guess what? While Australia was a country founded for convicts, Georgia was a colony founded for convicts. So there's the common denominator.
That's what I said.
That's why I want to date a girl in Georgia, because I've been waiting to I didn't know. I've been to Georgia like 8 times before I sort of noticed the number plate and went, the Peach State. What's peaches going to do with Georgia? And all the Americans are laughing at me like I was supposed to know that. I didn't know that. I've never had a Georgian peach, so I'll date one.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I guess you get along with people in Georgia is you both come from convicts, and I guess that's kind of like they dump the convicts here in Georgia and they dump them in Australia. So the Australians and Georgians get along pretty well. Same sort of heritage. But Peter, you said something earlier on the show very interesting. Illegal immigrants. Were these illegal or legal immigrants coming to the United States?
No, 183,000 illegal immigrants came to the United States last month. We're on a track for 2 million, and that's the ones they admit. Who knows how many, or maybe they're not counting. But 2 million illegal immigrants, 8%, according to some studies, are COVID positive. They're not giving them shots. They're shipping them all over the country. This is probably not either a good health care decision or a good financial decision. Look, I'm not opposed to legal immigration, but let's know first that they're not a terrorist. Second, that they're not maybe a criminal. Third, that they don't have COVID. Just little things like that, and maybe even say somebody who's going to be productive to society. Although not everybody needs to be, but why would we look? My brother wants to go to Canada. He's in Washington State right now, and he's considering getting dual citizenship. He's applied, but it's taking him years to apply, and it's very vigorous. There's tests and a citizenship test. It's going to cost him a lot of money, because Canada wants to make sure there's tests. Like, are you going to be a productive citizen or not? Are you going to have a business? Are you going to, they're not just letting people with COVID who are going to go on welfare in without, walking over the border. And that seems to make a lot more sense in the long run.
David, what are we doing with America 2040?
I've got some questions here, but
you have some questions.
I talk about immigration in the book. Okay. First you have to understand that there are some provisions in the Constitution that are outdated and that create perverse incentives. Back when the Constitution was adopted in 1789 or 1787, it was dangerous to get here. I mean, you had to risk your life to go across an ocean to get here. All right. And we have a provision of the Constitution that says that if you are born in the United States, you are automatically a citizen. Well, that creates very perverse incentives for illegals to come across the border, have a child, and then with our chain migration policy, to be able to not just have the parents stay here, but to have a whole string of in-laws and aunts and uncles and a variety of other situations. We need to modernize our immigration policy to do what many other industrialized nations have done, including Canada, and that is to recognize that we need to consider the economic needs of the country and the abilities of the individual. We need to do more matching with regard to skills and knowledge. We need to make sure that people are in a position that they're not going to be wards of the state, which is what Canada does. And we need to separate. We need to understand the difference between temporary work visas and permanent green cards and citizenship. They are fundamentally different things, and there's a way to work out a sound immigration policy if we recognize those differences and if we secure the border. You must secure the border.
You know what I would add to that, David, that just a little footnote. You know what? It isn't that we would, just because, let's say you're a liberal and you feel that, well, we shouldn't allow people to be charitable. So you know what? Let's say we decided on a policy of 10% of people could be on the welfare state or whatever, some percentage. But either way, it doesn't have to be 100%. But the point is, for those who are more liberal or want open borders, at least let the government create a policy where we know what we're doing, rather than just randomly saying everybody with COVID, everybody's a criminal, everybody who could be 95% on the welfare state, or it could be 5%. Why don't we debate, what percentage should be charitable and what percentage should be productive, and have an actual policy rather than come on over and we'll figure it out later.
One of the areas that has been stuck, and I'll just leave it after this, one of the areas that's been stuck in Congress for many, many years is immigration reform. The Democrats want a pathway to citizenship, and they want very liberal immigration policies. The Republican, we have to have immigration. I used to be a trustee of Social Security and Medicare. We're counting on about 2 million immigrants a year, legal immigrants, because if we don't get at least 2 million a year, the U.S. population won't grow, because our birth rate is basically a replacement rate. So as a result, we need that. But and in order to get that kind of policy, you have to have Congress act, and Congress is totally dysfunctional.
Let me just say something about your birth rate. My mother loves Judge Judy, so she bought this book, and I decided to read it. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's rating. So I read it. It's a short book. It's 108 pages or something. And she talks about some things that go on in the family court system in New York. One of the things she talked about was a particular case where a drug addict girl has had like 6 or 7 kids or something. And because of the preference for kinship adoption, her grandparents end up with all her kids. She decides that she wants to go and see her child. And the courts won't let her because the parental rights have been terminated. So American law, being the wonderful, sensible thing that it is, what she did was she said, okay, my parental rights have been terminated, but given that my mother has adopted my child, that makes my child my sister. So therefore, I'm entitled to see my sister. And she won the case. And so she got visitation with her sister. I mean, the whole thing is just a mess. I've been thinking about that, and I was rereading a sort of section of your book there, Dave, because I especially your section of taxation, which I love what you've written. I'm not sure I agree with some of the tax things that you've proposed in there, but one of the things that I really stood out for me was you said America's at a crossroads. Between, I'm paraphrasing, between, more government involvement, sort of socialism essentially, and, more freedom and capitalism. And I thought, well, the world has a mixed system. And I thought, you know what? I think I can embrace socialism. I actually think I can. No, I'm serious, Peter. I really can.
No,
those people that want socialism, right? They have to understand, like I keep trying to say to people, do you understand that socialism means the government dictates every aspect of your life? Socialism means that the government tells you what you're going to do. The government tells you what job you're going to have, and they use force to make you do what they want you to do. So if you want government handouts, you want the rich to pay, then the rich should be able to say, guess what? You're going to go work on that farm. Like Nick always says how great the economy is in China. You're not going to sit there on a street corner and get, government paid for needles so that you can, inject yourself because it's safer for you, and then leave your needles at school so that children can walk past and they get jabbed by the needle.
Wait,
catch,
okay,
right?
Your point is taken, but let me say, first of all, let's just look at the history of the world. I mean, anybody who's socialist should at least pay attention to every single time they've done it more or less, and I'll tell you the one exception.
Sorry, Peter, if I just say, a two-tier system, one half, the lower half gets socialism and force use against them. The other half that pays the taxes, they get to have freedom and capitalism, and you can choose which system you want. That's what you should do.
Well, that won't work either, obviously.
Well, that's what we have now.
The history of the world, when the Americans came over, the Pilgrims tried socialism for 2 years, and they almost starved to death, because they were going to. They tried to share their plots of land, and everybody was going to produce everything. And then in maybe the third or fourth year, they say, hey, wait, we're all dying. This isn't working. And they tried it in one of the other colonies. They've tried it in all countries. Look, if you give, it's so clear. Look at Russia. Look at China. And I have a point and a question about China, because there's been a big change in China this last few weeks. And I have a question for David that I want to drill into. But look, the history is you give the government that much power and they take it, and then they serve an elite political class, and the middle class, the business people and the workers get burned. I mean, time and time. And I will add, and I will add that the one case that they say, oh, look at the Scandinavian countries, because in all the world, in all these hundreds of cases, look at the Scandinavian countries. They're still free, and they're still, working socialist. But there's 2 points. One, the tax rates right there are lower than the United States currently. So they're socialist to a point, but maybe not. But the other thing is, these Scandinavian countries have been blessed with unbelievable wealth in a lot of ways. They have
have a broad tax base.
I'm almost finished. So they have oil wealth from the North Sea, which, by the way, is depleting. So we may discover now in the next 10 years how well it works as they get less revenue from oil. But the North Sea oil is depleting. It's peak oil for the North Sea. And so they get that, plus they have a huge, beautiful farmland. They have a beautiful fishing industry. So look, they are blessed with huge resources, but the oil alone may prove in 20 years or so that socialism doesn't even work there. But then look at the 100 other cases.
Well, let me just say, first of all, Scandinavian countries are not socialist. Secondly, they have a broader tax base. But the core of my point is this. Those people who say that you should use force in order to direct business, they should have force used against them. If you're going to reach into the taxpayer's pocket to have the taxpayer pay for your life while you sit on your ass and do nothing, and you're going to extol the virtues of socialism, let force be used against you. You have had a child that you can't support, we'll find you work, and you will do that work, and we will force you to do it. Because it's the same sort of force that's going to be used against somebody who is working, who doesn't want to pay their taxes. You don't pay your taxes and you tell the IRS where to go, you're going to have some federal agents knocking on your door, some armed people with guns who are going to take you away and use force or the threat of force to take your money. So if you want to sit there and do nothing, government force should be used against you. If you're prepared to be a productive member of society, you can have all the freedom that you want.
Shaquille, we have a constitution. It's not going to work. I have a question.
What's the Constitution say? What's the Constitution say, right, about taking somebody's labor? Okay, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the majority of people, the whole reason why you have you're a republic, a constitutional republic, is to restrain government power. Where is the sense that the majority of people, that the minority of people who are earning the money are having that money taken away from them, and they don't have any say because the majority who are worse off than them get to dictate how that money is spent? You've got 10% of the population of America paying 40% of the taxes, and they've only got 10% of the vote. Where's the sense of that?
I don't think the Constitution precludes workfare.
The system needs to change, but it's not going to happen that way. But Dave, let me ask a current events situation for David, because this is very interesting. So China in the last few weeks has cracked down on their economy big time. They seem to be attacking small businesses, and they've been doing this for a while. As a matter of fact, they've been doing it almost all year since February, but it just got worse within the last week and 2 and 3. And all of a sudden they're saying not only to tech companies, but other companies, we don't like your freedom, we don't like this. Now, the theory would be, the Xi, the head of China, wants more control. So that's always the fear of, that's the problem with communism. You give all the government to, or socialism, you give that much power, they can take it. But so here's the point, and then I'll ask the question, David. So if you look at the Dragon Fund, which is a Chinese fund, or if you look at another Chinese index fund, this year, the Dragon Fund is down almost 50%. They're Chinese stocks. And the an index fund of Chinese stocks is down almost 25% because of this crackdown. So what do you think is going on, and do you think this is going, where is this evolving? Do you have any opinions?
Well, first, are these public companies?
Yeah, they're
okay. That's my question, because if they're not public companies, obviously it wouldn't be affected by that fund. Well, look, I mean, I have several thoughts about it. Number one, I can't comment on China, but I know in this country, the engine of growth and innovation in our economy is small business. And therefore, to the extent that you crack down on small business, you're going to get less innovation and you're going to get less economic growth. Secondly, it's a power grab, obviously. Xi Jinping, who's head of the Chinese Communist Party and also head of the government, is the most powerful Chinese ruler since Mao. But the difference is that the Chinese economy, the Chinese diplomatic position, the Chinese military capabilities, and the Chinese cultural influence is much, much, much greater than it was under Mao. So, we'll see how this plays out. It's the classic trade-off between, providing more flexibility, more freedom, which can give you more growth and innovation, and yet wanting to have more control. And there are lessons that we can learn from that as well.
Yeah. David, is it possible that China actually implodes similar to what happened with Japan? Years ago, we were always wondering Japan's going to overtake the United States economically. Japan's doing this. Japan's buying that. And then all of a sudden, Japan sort of imploded by ratcheting up their debt to where their debt was far and exceed their GDP. They also weren't growing their younger population. They were having a lack of people coming in. Could China head the same way? And I like your book, America 2040, still a superpower. Could we still overtake China because of things like what Peter's saying, where they just start squashing in the small businesses over there? Is that possible that they make mistakes, they stumble?
Well, first, let's set the record straight. We're number one on a nominal dollar-based GDP. They're number one on purchasing power-based parity-based GDP and are scheduled to pass us. Could that not happen because they implode or something happens? Sure. But we're still number one on nominal dollars. Secondly, they passed us on number of diplomatic missions. All right. Thirdly, we're still number one militarily. They're number 2 or 3, depending on how you want to count. But they're investing a lot more in the military than we are. The current administration is proposing a 16% increase in non-defense discretionary spending and a 1.6% increase in defense discretionary spending in its budget. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of waste in the Defense Department. All right. And then we need to go after that so that we can end up cutting the tail, which is the overhead, in order to sharpen the tooth, which is warfighting capability. But look, China has got a huge difference between those that are have and those people that are have not. They've got a bigger challenge than we do. All right. They obviously are suppressing certain parts of their population, including the Uyghurs, if you will. But they also have a totalitarian government, and they're willing to do things that we would not be willing to do and cannot do under our Constitution. And so a lot of it depends upon whether or not the Communist Party can maintain power and control. That has a lot to do with it, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, Shaquille.
Sorry, let's just come back to something that you said before, which is that the birth rate in the US is falling, and so you've got immigration at 2 million just to maintain the numbers. I've said this before on previous shows. The immigrants that are coming to America, very few of them are coming from Western countries. Very few of them are coming from countries that have a similar economic wealth, educational system, that sort of stuff. What you're finding is immigrants are coming from predominantly much poorer countries in the United States that are migrating to the US. What are you saying? You're saying that middle-class kids that are growing up, wanting to have a relationship, wanting to start a family, that can't afford to buy a house, that can't afford to support their kids, that can't afford to give their kids at least as good a life as they've had. And so when whatever birth rate you do have in America is coming from people that are irresponsible. You're seeing teenage pregnancies. You're seeing, people that are using drugs. How many kids are born in America that are born on coke or born on alcohol or born on with some other substance in their system? So they're the kids that you're seeing. That's the population that you've got. Meanwhile, you've got hardworking people that are trying to do the right thing, to get an education, to build a life for themselves, that are struggling. And the solution is, let's just bring poor people in from overseas. It's absolutely wrong, and I'm going to stand by what I said. I know, Dave, that welfare may not be precluded from the Constitution, but exactly where does the Constitution say that the majority of people can tax the minority, and then take away the minority's rights to say how those tax dollars should be used? If you're going to reach into my pocket and ask me to pay, I better have some say as to how that money's being used.
Let me mention one thing. If you look at the preamble of the Constitution, you will see what the framers intended, or what the founders intended. And it includes words like provide for the common defense. Provide means an affirmative responsibility of the federal government, okay? And then it talks about promote the general welfare. Well, believe it or not, what's happened is that people are now trying to convert the word promote, which means encourage, to the word provide. That's what's going on. So if you look at what's happened, the federal government was 2% of the economy in 1912. Last year it was 26%, which is affected by COVID to a certain extent, all right? But it's on a track to increase dramatically in the future, and yet most of the things that the federal government are doing now are not express and enumerated responsibilities, and most of it is mandatory spending, which means it's on autopilot. Last thing, Sweden was in terrible shape in the 90s. I know the finance minister and the former auditor general there, who were part of the solution. They made a number of tough choices, and they're in much better shape today than they were in the 90s. And one of the things that they did is they put a cap on healthcare spending. The United States is the only country that I know, major country, that writes a blank check for healthcare. It's stupid. It'll bankrupt you.
Dave, I'll just say, the reference that you've made there to the preamble of the Constitution, where it says to promote the general welfare, it also goes on to say something on the lines of to secure our liberty and our
blessings of liberty.
The blessings of liberty and our future prosperity. And I would argue that disincentivizing the people who are earning in order to create a safety net for people who are going to abuse and game the welfare system does not exactly secure future prosperity for the United States. I'd say the same thing in this country here in Australia, where you're seeing people who are just gaming the system. You're seeing people that are intergenerationally reliant on government benefits. There is no reason for it. There's no excuse for it. Please not. Look, my mother immigrated to this country. She's had an amazing life. I've had an amazing life in this country, and I'm not going to have it that our countries are somehow denying opportunities. If you want to have an opportunity, you aren't going to find better countries than Australia or America or Canada or the UK and many other Western countries to have those opportunities. And at some point, I don't want to hear about your terrible childhood or what happened to your ancestors 300 years ago. If you want to have a good life, you need to get up and do something about it and stop reaching to other people's pockets.
Let me just read the last part of the preamble that you referenced. It says, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And the point that I have made, which you're touching on, is right now what we're doing from a fiscal and monetary standpoint, and we can add a number of other policies. Immigration feeds into that. How we're handling healthcare feeds into that, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, what we're doing is we're living for today and we're mortgaging the future. So we are not discharging our responsibilities. And most of the things the federal government is doing are beyond what the founders intended. And so one of the things that we are dealing with right now in the United States is we have a great ideological battle going on between whether or not we're going to stick with the principles and values under which we were founded and that made us great, recognizing that we want to strive for an ever-perfect union, or whether we're going to adopt the socialist state principles. And I hate to tell you, and they're outlined in the book, and you know that, Shaquille, The fact is, the socialist state principles are winning right now. Now, I think the people are going to reject that in 2022 and possibly 2024. But that's where we're at. We're on a big ideological battle right now to determine what the future direction of this country is.
Look, I can understand there being some requirement or some need within a wealthy country, because most wealthy countries do this, to want to see an increase in government-provided services or government-funded services. That's fine, but it's how it's funded, it's how it's provided. Take those Scandinavian countries; they've got an extremely broad tax base. They've got 2 or 3 tax rates. They don't have 200 tax rates, whatever you've got in the United States. They don't have half the population not contributing to the government revenue at all. So, and they also have very, very friendly, business-friendly things. If I was going to start a business in Europe, Sweden is right up there in the countries that I would look at, because the regulations there are not what they are in the United States, where the regulators weaponize the regulations to go after you for small mistakes. What happens in Sweden is government people will actually help you. They'll come in and they say, how can we help you to comply? How can we actually help you to create a business? They're very, very active in trying to bring businesses there. Look, there are some real flaws in Sweden that I think that they need to deal with. But the fact of the matter is that the US hasn't done that. The US has just decided to divide people into different groups, and every group is the enemy of another group. Dan talked about the Mormons before. The Mormons and the evangelicals don't like each other. You believe the same God. What's going on? Have a look at the Democrats. You've got transgender people and other members of the LGBT community fighting when they believe the same stuff. And on more serious issues, race relations. There's nobody on the other side of the Democrats' argument that says, oh, we actually hate black people, we think they should be oppressed. There's nobody on that side. Everybody believes that people, regardless of their skin color, should have opportunities. It's just how to get there. And what I've said, I said this to Nick off air the other day, the real problem with the US and most other Western countries today is that people agree, both parties agree, and so they have a particular idea or a particular issue that they need to deal with. So they bring it up in Parliament or in Congress in the United States. And the Republicans and the Democrats try to find a point of difference. So they politicize the difference, not the issue. Then they decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to compromise. And then they go and pass a law that neither Republicans nor Democrats like, and that Americans don't like. So you end up with laws that nobody likes. If you actually have an idea and you think it's a good idea, you better pray like hell that the politicians don't like it, because the Democrats are both like it. There's no chance of passing.
We're going to have to hold that thought because we're at the hour, and unfortunately we're going to have to go. We'd like to thank the Honorable David M. Walker for attending the show, and we'll bring those issues on next week. And thank you, everybody, for watching another edition of Economics Monday. We'll see you next week.